KC Laboratory. Sponsored by Emprise Bank.
It's the KC Laboratory presented by Emprise Bank. Emprise debit cards are contactless, secure, and faster than ever. So fast, they're giving the cheetah a run for his money. Emprise Bank, member FDIC. Special shout out appreciation for them and what they've done here, helping get KC Sports Network going. And we are thrilled to be talking about our favorite football team here. And by we, I mean my dear pals. First, find him on Twitter at Chief in Carolina. Maddie Lane, what's good?
Everything's going well. It's been a good week. You know, my one of my pigs had her baby, so I have 6 new healthy pigs on the farm type thing that I live on. So it's been a good week. And you know what makes it a better week? Getting to sit down with my friend Craig Stout and talk about the Chiefs' upcoming opponents during this 2021 season, and potentially be getting called Matt Lame for my poor takes. That's okay. I am used to that nickname. It is one that has stuck with me since like middle school.
Yeah, unfortunately, we kind of saw that one coming, but so it is. We're going to talk about some teams that are not the Titans, so the Titans fans cannot get mad at us again this week. And we're going to talk about... They can
if they want to watch. No, if they want to tune in, they can be as mad as they want.
Come hate watch us. Yeah, just come hate watch us.
Listen, there's lots of people that hate watch me and hate read me and hate everything me, but that's fine.
False.
We welcome you in. Come, join us. So, yes, we got 2 more opponents that the Chiefs are playing in this season because it's June and it's the off season, and we're all waiting for that Tyrann Mathieu extension to land. So let's talk about a couple more teams here.
You know what's going to happen? We're going to post this video, and like 3 minutes afterwards, there's going to be an announcement that the Tyrann Mathieu extension has happened. Like that's
how. At the time this is being recorded, I highly doubt that.
All right. Well, we are going to continue our season preview. As Craig just mentioned, we're going week 9 and week 10. And we start with the Green Bay Packers coming into Kansas City, and perhaps an Aaron Rodgers versus Patrick Mahomes matchup that we're finally getting to see. But beyond Aaron Rodgers, what's the quality of this roster, Craig?
It's pretty good. I think a lot has been made about the fact that, you know, Aaron Rodgers has lacking weapons and his dissatisfaction and all of that, but they do have a good offensive line. They've actually got some young pieces on defense that I like a lot that have really taken some major strides here. Devontae Adams is one of the best receivers in the NFL, and Aaron Rodgers is still Aaron Rodgers. I do fully expect that he is going to report that he is going to be their quarterback this entire season. I think that all of this is just a little bit of hoopla right now that we're all laser focused on because it's the off season. But I do like the quality of this roster. This is one of the better rosters that the Chiefs is going to play this year. And they've got a lot of good complementary pieces outside of the obvious ones that everybody focuses on with the Packers, which is those weapons that Aaron Rodgers is throwing to.
Yeah, I think top to bottom, this particular roster is definitely going to be one of the better ones the Chiefs are going to see throughout the season. I do, however, have one big question mark for this team outside of Rodgers, and that's the offensive line. This offensive line's been really good over the past few seasons, but there's a lot of guys either returning from injury or you're getting some new faces stepping in on this offensive line now. So David Bakhtiari's coming back to play left tackle. He's coming off a season-ending injury. Next to him, a guy that he hasn't really played much with, John Runyon, who's going to be a second-year, 6th-round draft pick, is playing guard. You got Elgton Jenkins might kick back into center. He might play guard, so a rookie like Josh Myers can step in. And then Billy Turner's the right tackle, who I think is very up and down. Just, it's not as good of an offensive line on paper that it's been performing over the last 3 or 4 seasons. Now, like I'm saying here, the Packers have had a great offensive line the past few years, so maybe the coaching is really what makes it, and this line's going to be excellent, be the best pass blocking unit yet again in the NFL. But just looking at it, I could see a potential weakness in the chain here just at this offensive line position. And like Craig said, I think that defense is really starting to turn the corner in terms of talent. They got some young guys that are ready to step up. So this is going to be no easy game. This is one of the few games where the talent level might be very near equal for the Chiefs.
Yeah, I would tend to agree. And they at least have some interesting pieces to look at along that offensive line. You kind of mentioned Josh Myers. If he's able to step in from week 1, then you have a little bit more flexibility with an Elgton Jenkins, who I think we were all pretty high on coming out, if I remember correctly. I think that was the draft before the draft guide, but I think we were all talking. But yeah, that's well, maybe was he in the draft guide? Was he in the draft guide?
He was the first year of the draft guide because we all like Cesar Ruiz more, I do believe. And then you had the Texas A&M center that went to the New Orleans Saints. And then you
Eric
had
McCoy.
McCoy. And then you had Ellington Jenkins were kind of your top three.
Yep.
I think we had Jenkins as the second interior offensive lineman, I think, but I could be wrong there. I just do know we all really like Cesar Ruiz.
We did. And so they have some interesting pieces along that offensive line. They have some, they've added an interesting piece in their secondary as well. I'm sure somebody will talk about that here in a little bit. But let's talk about the quality of the staff. Matt LaFleur has come in guns blazing. He's had a lot of success early, Maddie.
He has. And I think the interesting part with LaFleur is he's gotten Aaron Rodgers to play on time. Like the biggest critique anybody ever had of Aaron Rodgers was holding the ball too long, always looking for that really big play. And then he often took a lot of sacks or was forced to make incredible throws, but they were much harder than they had to be. So I do think LaFleur should get a lot of credit for that. But at the same time, I do think he can limit some of the explosive tendencies that Aaron Rodgers does play with. Part of that is the weapons that they do deal with. But he so far has done an excellent job getting Aaron Rodgers back to that MVP level. But to me, I'm sure Craig's going to talk about him a little bit, or maybe I just put Craig on the spot, but Joe Barry, he's an interesting guy, defensive coordinator, because he's worked with Monty Kiffin, Wade Phillips, Staley, Brendan Staley coming out over from the Rams. Like he's got a lot of good defensive coordinators, head coaches that he's worked under, but his only stint as a defensive coordinator was very rocky. They had a good pass rush, but they didn't particularly perform well on their points allowed, their yards allowed. So he's finally getting another chance now. What has he learned? Is he going to be better than he was in Washington, 5-6 years ago? So that's where my eyes are glued to right now.
Yeah, my eyes are glued there as well. I mean, he's coming off of being an assistant head coach and a linebackers coach for Sean McVay. So he did kind of have to handle a lot of that defensive side of the ball, had to help with game plans and things like that, being an assistant head coach. So this is a task that I think he is prepared for. And like Maddie said, being that defensive coordinator before at the NFL level prepares you to get, some of the week to week stuff going. I do think that he's coming into a good situation. I mean, that town hated Mike Pettin, just absolutely hated Mike Pettin with a passion. So he's certainly going to be a step up in a lot of Packers fans' minds. He's got some good coaches on his roster still. A guy that we all love, Mike Smith, former Chief, has really maximized those outside linebackers, those pass rushers, really made them turn the corner. Rashaan Gary was a very raw guy, and he started to really make strides under Mike Smith as well. So I think that he's done a good job of retaining the guys that had connection to the players and are going to make that transition a lot easier for him in Green Bay. I think that he's actually going to be able to hit the ground running pretty well. Those young guys are all hard workers and really ferocious. Like Jair Alexander's on that team, and he's talking right now about somebody that he's got to match up with. So I just really like what they've done, and I think he's going to be able to lead that defense pretty well.
Yeah, the cupboard is not bare on that side of the football for Joe Barry, and the cupboards aren't bare for this football team. This is a stocked roster, and there are some new additions to talk about, Craig.
Yeah, there really are. I think I'm gonna leave the one that I think that everybody is going to really focus on a lot, and I'm going to talk about Eric Stokes. Eric Stokes is a very raw cornerback and it's a position that they need a cornerback at. I think we all remember Kevin King getting absolutely roasted in the NFC playoffs last year, just giving up. It was so bad. Like that's going to be everybody's lasting memory of him. Eric Stokes is a really, really raw player coming out of Georgia, a guy that's got freak talent, though. His athletic profile is top notch. So I think that if they can get him to progress, as well as they have the rest of those DBs, the way that they've been able to coach those guys up, and obviously being in the room with a lot of those guys, you've got, again, Jair Alexander, Darnell Savage, you've got, Adrian Amos. Those guys are all really savvy veterans that are going to get him up to speed quickly. I think he's got a shot to start week 1, and I think he's got a shot to actually perform really well just because he's got the physical tools to help make up for any mistakes or lapses in judgment that he may have schematically, at least initially.
The big one for me is going to be wide receiver Amari Rodgers out of Clemson. I actually think he fits the missing piece that the Packers have as at the wide receiver position. He gives them a guy to put in the slot, to work the underneath route stuff, to work a lot of the motion game, created or manufactured touch game. And he's a guy that could come really close to matching Randall Cobb's production in Green Bay a few years ago with Aaron Rodgers. It's a similar type of player. I think he's excellent with the ball in his hands. So he just gives him a good complementary piece to go with the possession, Alan Lazard and Devontae Adams, and the deep threat of MVS. So I like his fit with this wide receiver group. I don't think he'll have a huge statistical year, but I do think he'll play a pivotal part in just a lot of their pre-snap stuff and getting, some just manufactured easy yards when everything else is focused somewhere else.
So the Packers really didn't do a ton in free agency. They lost more than they gained, really, from a talent perspective, losing Corey Linsley. And the replacement for Corey Linsley, a really quality center, is probably Josh Myers. Talked a little bit about him earlier. I think I had a pretty solid grade. I actually think I might have had him graded higher than Creed when during the. I think I might have had him.
I think you might have. Yeah,
I think I did. I like Josh Myers a lot. He's a little bit stiffer than Creed is. He may not be as comfortable working up to the second level. He's not the same kind of player in space. We're not having to compare these guys apples to apples because they're on different organizations. But I think Josh Myers is a guy that's much more stout at the point of attack. He's able to anchor a lot better. I think those are some of his traits. I think operating within a phone booth, he's a lot better than what Creed is, even though we're not comparing him. But that's just kind of if you're comparing these guys, he's a bigger dude. He's a physical player, and I think he's one of the better pass protectors. So I think he's a really good fit and a really good replacement for Corey Linsley as this team tries to move on and tries to get cheaper along the interior of their offensive line. Players to watch, and there's a lot, like we kind of just talked about, and the one I'm really interested in watching is Rashaan Gary. These guys kind of talked a little bit about him earlier, but his growth and progression over the last couple of years has been really impressive. It wasn't always, early on it was pretty rocky for him. He was having a hard time seeing the field. His rookie year was, I don't want to say entirely a wash, but there was a lot of growing pains for him. He started to play a little bit more consistently. I think his hand tech's gotten a little bit better over the course of the last 2 years, and that athletic profile is starting to play. He's playing faster. He's playing a lot better. And, this is a big year for him, very obviously, because if he continued to grow and progress the way he has over the last year, things get pretty scary for him. He's kind of supplanted Preston Smith, who kind of, had a really good year 2 years ago for the Packers and kind of stepped off a little bit towards last year. And now it's Rashaan Gary's show, kind of potentially profile in this group as Zadarius Smith falls off a little bit too, I'm assuming.
Yeah, my guy is Big Bob Tonyan. Robert Tonyan exploded onto the scene for everybody last year with 11 touchdowns. And part of that is because his usage increased so much year over year. He got up to 61% of the offensive snaps. The year before it was 18%. The year before that, it was below 10%. So they kind of realized what they had in Big Bomb Tonyan and started utilizing him a lot more, especially in the red zone. But he started to get more integrated in the offense between the 20s as well. He really turned into a weapon for them. He really did. Like our buddy Jake Morley, who does the KC draft guide with us, was telling us early on, is like, hey, you guys got to watch out. Big Bob Tonyan. He's, kind of jokingly, he's coming for Travis Kelce. Then by the end of the year, the man had 11 touchdowns and was a serious threat. So I am very curious to see if he's going to be able to progress and continue that role, because like Maddie said, Amari Rodgers is there. You've got Devontae Adams. If you have this legitimate three-headed weapon that you can utilize in the passing game that does not involve your running backs, that is really hard to defend. So if he continues to progress, they're going to be pretty good on offense.
For me, I think you guys left me the low-hanging fruit. So we're going to go with Aaron Rodgers as the player to watch. And just because he's coming off an MVP season, but Rodgers throughout his career has been anything but consistent from year to year. Like, he's not really put back-to-back great seasons together, especially since about 2014. It's been some good, some bad, some good, some bad. Is he going to be able to put 2 seasons back to back at the elite level that he played at last year? Like, from a talent perspective, he easily can, but given what's going on this offseason, what kind of just mindset is he in when he gets to the team? Is everything going to gel? He's clearly upset with people in the front office or the coaching staff on some level. Is he going to be able to work right by it, play as a professional, be the Aaron Rodgers that he was last year? Just what's that look like going forward? Because this team, let's face it, is going as far as Aaron Rodgers takes them, like any team with a great quarterback. So is Rodgers ready to do that a second season in a row?
Week 9 in Arrowhead against the Green Bay Packers. How can the Packers come in and beat the Kansas City Chiefs, Maddie?
Well, the Packers have one of the few quarterbacks in the NFL that can go toe-to-toe with Patrick Mahomes and end up winning the game, whether it's by last possession or simply just playing slightly better on the given day. So if the Packers come in, they get the Chiefs in a shootout, and it's Aaron Rodgers' day to shine, and Patrick Mahomes is just a mere mortal, which results in still being a top 5 quarterback in the NFL, the Packers can win this game. They can simply outscore the Chiefs via better quarterback play.
Yeah, Devontae Adams, if he goes off and has himself a big day against L'Jarius Sneed and Charvarius Ward on the outside, it could be a long day for the Chiefs. We've seen number 1 receivers, especially explosive ones, good ones, take advantage of the Chiefs cornerbacks, which they haven't spent a ton of assets on, been able to exploit them just a little bit in some losses in Chiefs history recently. So I could see Devontae Adams really going off and creating problems for this Chiefs and allowing Green Bay to win this game.
Play action game affecting that young linebacking core, a core that doesn't exactly have great coverage skill sets. And an offense that certainly can put points up and a pass rush capable of affecting the quarterback. This is a team that no doubt has the horses to compete with this team and win, yes, even in Arrowhead. Who is the Chiefs MVP for this game? And I'm taking the easy cop-out answer. This is the State Farm Bowl. We've gotten 20 minutes into the show and haven't even mentioned it's going to be the State Farm Bowl. Patrick Mahomes is going to be ready to go up against Aaron Rodgers and try to remind everybody who the best player in the world is, who the MVP is. Aaron Rodgers got all this love, and Patrick Mahomes is the guy that you're going to be seeing as the MVP.
This entire segment is the non-Patrick Mahomes MVP.
I'm cheating.
No,
it's the week to cheat.
Not allowed. Pick somebody else.
I'm doing it. No, look. You get the Travis Kelce bit all the time. Oh, wait. Did I spoil it again? Sorry. I'm rolling with Patrick Mahomes.
Okay. Well, my guy is going to be not Patrick Mahomes because that's been off the table all year long, as we discussed when we first started doing this thing.
I'm cheating.
My guy is going to be Chris Jones in this game. I think that if Chris Jones can really take advantage of the interior of this Packers offensive line, that's going to ruin the game plan for the Green Bay Packers. I think we know that Aaron Rodgers is very comfortable in that pocket, as he should be with the good offensive line that he has. But Chris Jones is one of those types of players that can take over a game on the interior, rushing the passer, and really wreak havoc, force Aaron Rodgers off his game, having to play a little more out of time, off structure. He can do all those things ridiculously well, but with the way that the offense is structured right now and the way that they built things together, I think that Chris Jones can actually wreck this a lot more than some other instances against Aaron Rodgers that we've seen in the past.
So I know Joe Barry kind of cut his teeth as a defensive coordinator working with linebackers. He made that Rams linebacking unit, which is definitely not the most talented bunch, play relatively well in coverage. They do a pretty good job. He did a pretty good job with those guys covering them players. I just don't know if Camille Martin or, Owen Burke, these kind of guys are going to be able to go out there and stop Patrick Mahomes from throwing the football all over the field. So I am choosing Patrick Mahomes as my non-Patrick Mahomes MVP for this game as well, because I don't think that linebacker group is going to be able to cover guys like Travis Kelce, who would be the runner-up to the MVP of Patrick Mahomes.
Well done. I love it, Matt. It's great. And it's a great week to whip that out. And week 10, we'll move on and we'll go and talk about going to the Chiefs vacation home, the big Roomba in Vegas. They're going to the Las Vegas Raiders on week 10. What is the quality of the roster, Craig?
I mean, obviously a step back from the Packers, which is to be expected when you're talking about one of the better teams in the NFL. But I do like a lot of what the Raiders have here. I don't love their quarterback, obviously, and the entire Carr family just blocked this YouTube channel somehow. I'm not sure how they were able to do that.
Hold on. The Titans aren't coming for us this week. This week, it's just the Carr family.
It's just going to be the Carr family. But no, I really
get 5 yards past the line of scrimmage. You're safe.
Hey, tell that to the Chiefs defense last year, who got torched by Derek Carr, actually playing fairly well, throwing the ball deep. They've got Henry Ruggs. I actually really like Bryan Edwards as well. Obviously Darren Waller is one of the best tight ends in the league behind Travis Kelce. On defense, they are not nearly as good. They don't have the same bodies, especially in the secondary where they spent a lot of assets and really haven't been able to step up and perform particularly well. And then they got to go against the Chiefs every year. But I do like a lot of the offensive pieces that they have. I am worried about the offensive line a little bit. They got seriously gutted a lot of players. So it's going to be very interesting to see because a lot of pieces that I liked on this team are no longer on it.
Yeah, that's where you have to start is with that offensive line. I mean, you're looking at guys Andre James, Denzel Good, and Alex Leatherwood. That's an entirely new starting right center over to the right side of that offensive line. And that was the strength of this Raiders team on offense. I know Carr had some good weeks. Josh Jacobs had a good rookie season and he had some moments last year, but I think it all stems from how good that offensive line was. And now all of a sudden the pressure has shifted from the offensive line making your job easy if you're Derek Carr or Josh Jacobs to making it very difficult potentially, especially off that right side. If that offensive line is even average, that's a huge step back for them. And I think that throws a huge wrench into their game plan. So for that reason, I think that does set their roster back as a whole quite a bit. You took the biggest position of strength and made it a giant question mark. And then you flip sides. I mean, they have been trying to figure out that secondary for what feels like a decade now, and they just can't get it right. And that's what happens when you have Damon Arnett who can't keep up figuratively or literally on the football field. And he can't even, the first round draft pick has been demoted. Casey Hayward's come in. He's a good player, but this secondary just cannot seem to put it together. I'm not afraid of anybody on this defense. There's some talent in the pass rush, but they still have just not had a good defense for, again, it seems like a decade now.
I think this is a very underwhelming and on paper, I think it's some of these guys, there's some names to them, but I don't know if any of these guys or a lot of these guys are necessarily in the prime of their career. Some of these acquisitions that they've brought in, not necessarily the best versions of themselves. So very, very much a John Gruden roster is really what it is. That just reeks of John.
Say more about Hunter Renfrow.
Oh, well, yeah, that dude's having himself a career. Good for him.
30 years running.
Yeah, that accountant's having himself a real nice time here in the league and more than I anticipated. I'll catch that L. But the John Gruden, speaking of quality of this staff, and there's some new face. There's a new face here, Gus Bradley. We're all very familiar with Gus Bradley here, former Jacksonville head coach, former Los Angeles Charger defensive coordinator, a guy that has been in the AFC West. So, John Gruden makes a lot of sense for him to go calling on him, one of the better defensive coordinators who's had a lot of success in the National Football League. Makes sense that he goes and grabs a guy who's all too familiar with the Kansas City Chiefs, which is the primary objective of any AFC West opponent, is trying to stop Patrick Mahomes. So, Gus Bradley, nice quality addition to this staff. John Gruden, there's still a lot of money that Mark Davis can't afford to leave just sitting on the table dead, So John Gruden's got a lot of time to build this thing. He's got a lot of leash still, and it doesn't really matter what he does, which is maybe why he's just signing a bunch of guys with names off the street.
Yeah. I think we saw John Gruden's kind of approach last year. A lot of the games for the Raiders were kind of the same old thing, get play action, run behind a very good offensive line. Josh Jacobs is very good, volume targets for Darren Waller. Like, it makes perfect sense. It's playing to your team's strengths, but it's keeping it short. And then the 2 games that they played against the Chiefs, they really opened things up. And they only really did that in those 2 games, just as kind of tendency breakers. So the question mark's going to be, is that the team that they can try and maximize? Mix that in a little bit more. You showed your hand to the Chiefs now. Surely Steve Spagnuolo and company aren't going to get bit by it a 3rd time. Please don't get bit by it a 3rd time. But we'll see what that offense is able to do behind what we're projecting to be a step back in an offensive line here. So I am very curious to see which offense is the one that they're going to do, because they showed that they could do it against this Chiefs defense. Is it something that they can do a little bit more regularly with Greg Olsen, John Gruden behind a young offensive line coached by Tom Cable?
Well, I think that's a lot of the credit that has to be given to Gruden, is he has at times gotten Derek Carr to step out of his comfort zone and actually taken some shots down the field. It's mostly been against the Chiefs, but he's been able to do that. And that's something that other coaches have not been able to do with Derek Carr. So you do have to give him a little bit of credit for that. That job becomes a lot harder when your offensive line isn't giving you 5 seconds every single passing play. So we'll see how that plays out now. The other thing that I think you kind of got to give Gruden a little bit of credit for too, he gets his guys to play hard for certain games. There are certain games throughout the season that John Gruden gets his players to play at or above their talent ceiling that week. And it's significant, because you watch the Raiders play against the Patriots last year, and then you watch them play against the Chiefs, and it's night and day what that team was able to do. So he can get them up for specific games. He's got that level of motivation. He just lacks consistency there. I do think the game of football has also passed John Gruden by a little bit. He's trying to catch up, but he's struggling to get up with modern football, and the Raiders still owe him $7 million as a head coach. So as a rival fan, we just smile about that and move on.
Well, before we move on from this topic, do we think that this is the do or die year for John Gruden? Like, is this the
he's owed too much money.
You just don't think that they can afford to take that hit?
Mark Davis is flying Southwest.
I know.
He can't afford.
Mark Davis let the right side of his offensive line go because of money reasons. Yeah.
I think that Gruden gets through one attempt at quarterback change.
Okay.
I think that if it fails this year, I think they give him a chance to try to make something happen with a new quarterback. I think once you get to year 5, halfway point, I think is when they can cut bait, which that would be 2 more years from now. So if they fail this year,
he's due like $70 million. Do we really think that Mark Davis cares enough I don't.
When do those Vegas kickbacks start hitting? When do those start hitting?
I don't know, but he bet on John Gruden. He bet. And there's been all kinds of rumors and buzz that he's cash poor.
Well, Mark Davis sure didn't care about his cash when they were spending all that gas to ride around their October Super Bowl of beating the Chiefs.
We'll get there probably.
I cannot wait for that game. That's my number 1 most anticipated game.
I think I said that. Yeah, on a podcast. I think I said that. That's the number 1 game that I'm interested to see.
They're gonna bop them. New additions to this roster, Maddie.
Alex Leatherwood, because he's playing right tackle. I don't think that we felt like he should be starting out as an offensive tackle, especially right away. The Raiders reached a little bit, according to general consensus, to take him in the first round. So if he wasn't for it being the Raiders, I would almost be pulling for him to stick it to everybody that thinks they know football better than the NFL. But it is the Raiders. You look at their history of their first round picks, and like you could almost put it in stone that Alex Leatherwood is going to struggle like a lot of their other first round picks. So it's just going to be interesting. He does have big shoes to fill coming in for replacing Trent Brown. What's he going to be able to do on this offensive line, especially at tackle, where I have some major questions about just his ability to play out on an island at the NFL level?
I was actually going to go Alex Leatherwood, and I didn't think there was a chance that Maddie would go Alex Leatherwood, and that's okay. That's all right. I will say, I think my whole point with that is on Alex Leatherwood. Maybe I'll just double down on Alex Leatherwood because I have some takes.
Yeah,
look,
do it.
Derek Carr, when he does not have everything perfect in front of him, is a dumpster fire. When he doesn't have the time and he's having to navigate pressure, he does not solve problems. He doesn't
threw
do
the
it.
ball away on 4th down.
He's a train wreck. I'm sorry, Raider Cody. I hope you're listening. Your quarterback's a train wreck when the offensive line in front of him is not exceptional to very good. And this group is banking on Alex Leatherwood to be the guy that helps hold this group together. Frankly, they need Alex Leatherwood to be a day one dude. And I don't see it with him. And I think I was probably that. I don't think he's a tackle. I think he's a guard.
I think he's a potentially really good guard too.
Sure. But he's a guard. They needed a tackle. And there's just a lot of question marks for me about that offensive line, which means there's a lot of question marks about Derek Carr because he has to be carried because he is incapable of doing anything when the play breaks down. Quote that.
Okay, Frank. I'm going with Yannick Ngakoue. Come over here after kind of a tumultuous season last year. Started in Minnesota, ended up in Baltimore. I think everybody kind of remembers that whole thing and how much of a frustration he was for Minnesota and then going to Baltimore. Like it was not a great situation that he was in. And yet he still had 8 sacks last year. Like he still had production and they need production. They've got Cleveland Farrell, a guy that we all really liked coming out of college and just hasn't been able to put it all together and be an NFL caliber rusher. They need somebody that they can count on to get consistent pressure. Since they had Khalil Mack leave this team, they have not been able to rush the passer at a consistent clip. They just haven't. And frankly, the other guy on that defensive line that they were relying on to do that for the past couple of years is gone in Maurice Hurst. So I just don't know. They need help. They need somebody that can rush the passer. They went out and spent on Yannick. I think that he's their best shot to be able to do that. So I'm really, really interested to see if he can make that jump in year 1.
All right, players to watch. I'm up first. I'm going with Darren Waller. And it really sucks that Darren Waller's a Raider because I'm rooting for him. He's a guy that's been through a lot to get to the point where he was. He came into the league as a wide receiver, had some substance abuse issues that really derailed his career, came back bigger, bulkier, and turned into one of the most dynamic tight ends in the National Football League. This man is a monster. He's a matchup nightmare. He's an exceptional athlete. He can win at the catch point. He's got fluid hips similar to a Travis Kelce, not comping him entirely to Travis Kelce because there's a long way to go for this guy, but he's a problem. He's an absolute problem, and he's one of the redeeming qualities of the John Gruden era.
Yeah. My guy is another player that I could have chosen for a new addition, Trevon Moehrig. I loved Trevon Moehrig coming out, and this team, as Maddie said, needs secondary help. They got to find somebody. They got to get one of these guys to really work out in a big way. I think they thought that Jonathan Abram was that guy, and year 2 was not good to Jonathan Abram. So getting another player back there with Abram behind Trayvon Mullen, behind Damon Arnett, behind Amik Robertson, Casey Hayward, whoever it is that ends up out there, getting another guy that can play that deep center field role a little bit better, be able to cover some ground, be able to take good angles and be a smart player on the back end is desperately needed for this team. So I think that he's going to get every opportunity to kind of organize things on the back end. He might be able to make a lot of those guys a lot better player just by keeping everything organized in front of him.
So here's a little storyline that somehow went under the radar this offseason. Carl Joseph found his way back onto the Las Vegas Raiders roster after a very weird John Gruden hates him, forced him out, wouldn't play him, didn't want anything to do with him situation the year before. Carl Joseph goes to Cleveland, has arguably his best season out of the last 3 years. And then the Raiders are like, oh, Carl, no, we need you back now. because Jonathan Abram isn't good, so we need you to come back, Carl Joseph. We need some kind of help. Yeah, we ran you out of town, but please come back to us. Like, what a wild storyline that nobody really talked about, that the Raiders literally had to probably grovel to get Carl Joseph to come back after the way they treated him on the way out. Like, this is great. That's my player to watch. I just want Carl Joseph press conferences every single week this year just to see how that relationship is going, because that's wild to me.
You just want Carl Joseph and John Gruden in a room that you just get to watch every single week.
That's all I need. And like Jonathan Abram can be there too, because he's doing, so why not?
Don't give me
oh man.
John Abram loves himself some John Abram. That man he's just dramatic to try to get attention. It's ridiculous.
Him and John Gruden are the same person, I guess.
Yes, absolutely. They're both named John. What do you think? John Abram knows how to say salmon, but on Hard Knocks he pretended not to. He was trying to be Jessica Simpson. Is this chicken or is this fish? Is salmon? No. You knew exactly what you were doing, John Abram. Why'd you have to bring up John Abram, Matthew? Sorry. How do the Raiders beat the Chiefs? Well, John Gruden has to be in his bag. It's an A+ game script. John Gruden very obviously treats this like a Super Bowl because he did a little parade with the bus after the game in Arrowhead. They are all about this game. John Gruden is doing everything in his power to try to beat the Chiefs. I'm not convinced that John Gruden wouldn't mind going 2-15 if he's going 2-0 against the Chiefs. He's going to be in his bag. It's not going to be enough, but that's how. John Gruden doing John Gruden things, excellent game scripts, and picking on Charvarius Ward again, probably.
Yeah, and Charvarius has to have arguably the worst game of his
brain
career.
Fart game again.
It really was. It was just it is a bad performance by Charvarius. And that one, he was certainly much better in the second one, but they were still able to hang with him because John Gruden was making those types of play calls. It was all tendency breakers. That's what it was. It was all tendency breakers. It was taking these deep shots with the Chiefs trying to cut everything underneath and drive on everything underneath. He got Derek Carr to play the anti-Derek Carr game. So that's how it happens again. Steve Spagnuolo comes in and says, listen, they're not going to do it to us a third time. And then Derek Carr does it again. That's how that's how the Raiders could beat the Chiefs in either one of these matchups that they're going to play this year.
So I don't want to keep saying the same thing of the Raiders just coming out with the 180-degree game script, because that's exactly what they did last year. So I'm going to go with the pass rush decides to show up and just be absolutely unstoppable. Cleveland Farrell takes that final step. Well, okay, we got to talk about it. Cleveland Farrell against the Chiefs is a very good football player. Cleveland Farrell versus every other team, mediocre. So you get Chiefs version of Cleveland Farrell. Max Crosby has 17 sacks over 2 seasons. That's nothing to, look away at. Now, I'm not the biggest Crosby fan. I think a lot of his sacks are kind of cheap sacks, but he has 17 sacks in 2 seasons. You can't ignore that. You now add Ngakoue to that. They have Quentin Jefferson, Jonathan Hankins. If all of a sudden this pass rush starts getting home versus the Chiefs' brand new offensive line, you could maybe get yourself into a situation where the Raiders are within striking distance and they are going back to that 180-degree offensive game plan, just chucking the ball down the field, and the Chiefs aren't ready for it.
All right. Who is the Chiefs non-Mahomes MVP? Or maybe I should say this. Craig, who's driving the bus for the Chiefs in this game?
Oh, I'll tell you who's driving the bus for the Chiefs in this game. It's L'Jarius Sneed, because Derek Carr, without having the offensive line to protect him, is going to throw interceptions. We know this. We have become very familiar with it in Kansas City, especially before, last year. So L'Jarius Sneed is probably going to play on the boundary. I think that he's going to be the recipient of a lot of low percentage throws chucked his way towards Henry Ruggs, towards Brian Edwards, towards whoever it is that's out there on the outside. I think he's going to come down with a few of them because we know he's got great ball skills, and we know that Derek Carr is just going to throw up some prayers trying to avoid pressure.
Well, Travis Kelce just won Chiefs fans free Bud Light during the Tight End U convention. So He's also going to win some free Bud Light after the team celebrates by putting him on their shoulders for being the non-Patrick Mahomes MVP against the Raiders, like he is every single time they play. Travis Kelce owns the Raiders. He always has. He's always going to. It's crazy. Nicholas Moreau, the Raiders coverage linebacker, has actually been a coveted player when he hit free agency this year because he has good quote-unquote coverage grades. I've never seen the guy show any form of coverage against Travis Kelce. Now, it's not fair. Kelce is the best tight end of all time, and you're asking him to cover him. But Travis Kelce, when he plays the Raiders, it becomes the most uncoverable player in the NFL. If he's not every single week, it's going to continue. Travis Kelce is going to be your non-Patrick Mahomes MVP, Kent.
I really wanted to go with Derek Carr on this, especially since his brothers are better at blocking on Twitter than his offensive line on the right side is blocking. But I'll go with Jaron Reed, who will feast on that interior offensive line. That is going to do it for this episode of the KC Laboratory presented by Emprise Bank, member FDIC. Thank you so much for listening, for watching, wherever you're consuming this. Make sure you're checking everything going on at KCSN, KCSportsNetwork.com, and KCSN.substack.com. We appreciate you. Catch you later.